This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be financial or investment advice. Seek a licensed professional for investment advice about crypto or any other investment. Welcome to the Blazing Crypto Podcast. We are Justin and Brandon, and today, largely, we're going to ignore the noise of the charts. Thankfully, we have the privilege of ignoring some of the noise of global geopolitical conflict. Not that it's unimportant, but today we're going to focus on another piece of education, another thing where we have an opportunity to learn, to dive into something that might be new to some of you. And we're going to explore the world of NFTs. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. That's why we're doing this episode. If you do know what it is, I'm looking forward to you taking another step in your learning, finding something that's interesting to you, and pursuing that really in your own research. We decided to divide, the NFT episode into two episodes. So in the first episode, we'll talk about what are these things, what does the word NFT mean, what does the current landscape look like, and really just some big ideas with NFTs. In the second episode, we'll talk about specific examples, use cases, and really focus a lot on innovation and where we see the space going. A look ahead, Justin and I are very excited about NFTs. We see them going a lot further, being a lot more important to society than even they are right now, and we think that's a good thing. So Justin, you ready to jump in and talk about NFTs?
I am. You forgot to do the disclaimer. There's a disclaimer for NFTs that is basically they're highly dangerously addictive and fun. You will be entertained, and you may or may not win or lose money in the process. So
that sounds like crypto to me. So yeah, we will dive in and figure out exactly how that's different and how that's the same. But that's a good disclaimer. So right off the bat, people hear the term NFT, and for me, that didn't ring a bell, right? I didn't confuse that with anything else. NFT stands for non-fungible token. So Justin, explain, the token part's pretty easy. It's a digital token, but help us explain to us the non-fungible part.
Yeah, so it just means it can't be repeated. So just like, think of a good way to describe this is think of like documents that you own, like the title to your car, deed to your house. These are physical documents that you own that can't be repeated. Well, if you try, that's called fraud, and exactly legally it can't be done. So in the NFT space, Bitcoin. Well, in the crypto space, Bitcoin. There's 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be created. Well, in NFTs, there's just one for each NFT, and that one token cannot be duplicated. So it's oftentimes used for art and stuff like that, and we'll get into that a little bit. But the other thing I was going to say is even within NFTs, though, you might have a collection of NFTs, so like a group of individual things. But just like in the analog world, that would be like if you owned 5 houses and you had 5 deeds to your home, right? They're not the same. They're very different, each one of them. But that's kind of a good way to describe it.
Yeah, and I think something to understand, to build off of there is the non-fungible part really has nothing to do with it being digital. Digital helps make it non-fungible. For instance, a couple of examples of fungible and non-fungible things. So fungible also has to do with the fact of items being completely interchangeable and not unique. So for instance, Bitcoin, you mentioned Bitcoin, Justin. Bitcoin is actually fungible. What that means is you don't really know when you're trading Bitcoin if you're trading like Bitcoin number 19 million or number 2.5 million, right? They're not really like numbered, and they're not separate, right? Like they're just directly interchangeable, and there's really nothing unique about the individual Bitcoin pieces that we're trading. That's part of what it means to be fungible. People don't realize this actually, that the US dollar, while it can be infinitely printed, as we know, the US dollar is actually non-fungible. And it's non-fungible for one reason. It has a specific code on the dollar bill. F1968. Now it's not a digital asset. It's not rare from a sense of being a U.S. dollar, but it is rare if you wanted. In other words, if you could prove that George Washington, this is an anachronism, right? They didn't have the U.S. dollars printed then, or let's say Abraham Lincoln had paid for whatever lunch at a restaurant, at a saloon, I guess, with this dollar bill, then that dollar bill has unique value, right? So fungible and non-fungible have realities even in the analog space, even in our physical world. Think about baseball cards. A card in a collection is going to be labeled 400 out of 600, but there are like 10,000 of those 400 cards, right? Those are directly interchangeable. That is not non-fungible. I think two ideas is with non-fungible is with blockchain is there's provable scarcity and there's provable ownership. And that's kind of marrying the idea of it being non-fungible with blockchain. That this is recorded, right? So Justin, anything else to add to that from the non-fungible or fungible standpoint?
No, I think it is it's a very confusing topic, especially if you haven't, if it's the first time you're hearing it. And it's been fun to kind of like try to explain it in different ways to different people over time. But yeah, so if it feels confusing, like don't feel bad. That's very normal.
Yeah, so think of it as fungible is all these things are just interchangeable. All of them are the same. You don't care which one you get. It's sort of like a general admission ticket to an event. They're all the same, right? You're going to sit where you sit, and which ticket you have didn't matter. Versus a fungible item is like a ticket where you have a seat number, right? There's only one person on that ticket for that seat, unless there was an error in the printing process. You may need to go back and listen to that segment again if non-fungible and fungible are new words to you, but that's just kind of a crash course. Justin, let's talk about the current NFT landscape. So you mentioned that there's art involved. People are using NFTs to basically digitize their art and distribute their art. We'll talk about that in a second. I wanted to point out how much sports is really jumping into the NFT landscape. My guess is a lot of our audience, by virtue of the demographics I understand about our audience, probably did some kind of sports card or sports collectible trading. Maybe you do it now. Maybe you buy stuff, if the Gamecocks win or Clemson wins, or for me, I spent a few dollars at Duke last week for Coach K's last game. But here's a stat that it was shocking to me. Deloitte, which is a consulting company, Deloitte put together a study, and they said they projected NFTs in sports. So sports companies and leagues, NFL, NBA, taking advantage of this, sports NFTs to do $2 billion with a B, $billion in revenue in the year 2022. So basically from zero 2 years ago, because this didn't really exist, to now this is a $2 billion industry, and we're only talking about sports. Secondly, OpenSea, which is the largest NFT exchange on the market. It's an Ethereum NFT exchange. In 2021, they did $14.6 billion in sales, and most of that was done in the last half of the year when NFTs really exploded. So right out the gate, I want you to know we're not talking about something that's barely taken off. We're talking about something that has exploded, and we are talking about tens of billions of dollars. So Justin, when you think about the rapid growth of this space, where this space has come in the last 12 months, what things stand out to you about the NFT space and the current landscape?
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out to me is just how quickly it changes. The NFT space has evolved a lot faster than anything else I've seen in crypto over the years. That's for sure. I mean, literally just a year ago, and if no one was really talking about NFTs at all, there were a few NFT collections out on Ethereum, but really all the growth you're talking about has happened in the last 12 months, which is just staggering. So I think that's the thing that makes it, or just it is very unique, just from how quickly it's growing. And a lot of that has to do with pop culture, I think. Pop culture with, we've got a lot of like, people, I think maybe Kanye did maybe he didn't do an NFT series. It sounds like something he would do. But, you got like Steph Curry. We've got athletes that are getting in on this stuff, celebrities and stuff like that. But, and obviously
there was a rapper, and now I can't think of who it was. There was a rapper that did an NFT collection, and it proved out to kind of just be a stunt. And people dropped, a few dollars on that and were a little bit upset.
Yeah, it was probably Snoop Dogg. I know he's involved in NFTs, but...
Please don't sue us for slander. I don't think it was Snoop Dogg. If Snoop Dogg ever listens to this episode, we are sorry, and we'd invite you to come on the show.
All right, I will stop talking about celebrities. Well, let's move on. But yeah, a lot of that growth has to do with it just hitting mainstream media through important individuals that have huge followings. And then, you talk about major brands that are getting into NFTs, Adidas, Nike, NFL, NBA. So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff happening. That's kind of the big thing that stands out.
Yeah. Two things I wanted to mention, and this really has nothing to do with diving into NFT specifically, but one of the things we really stress and emphasize on this show, which is one of the reasons we started this show, is you mentioned how quickly, as an umbrella thing, that crypto moves. But as we dive deeper, you also mentioned how much even more quickly NFTs are moving than even other aspects of the space. There are a couple of sort of technical reasons why that's true. In other words, the barrier to entry to create and mint an NFT series is not the same as building complicated software. That's part of it, right? But I want to emphasize to our audience, one of the reasons why we emphasize a commitment to learning and growth, and not, even if the charts and prices are not up and it's not exciting, if you're going to be in this space and if you're going to be in technology at all, you have to commit to learning at a rapid rate. And that is non-negotiable. It's not optional. I was trying to make a non-fungible joke there, but that wasn't going to work. So yeah, we won't do that. But the point is, even if you are 57, and I know we have a few quote unquote older people, older than us, on the show, which I love that are listening, pay attention to NFTs. NFTs will affect your life, as Justin said, a homeowner, property that you own, brands that you interact with. This is a part of life in the future, and we want to talk about it. I just wanted to say things are only going to continue happening faster, and not just fast in terms of crypto, but even faster in certain parts of crypto. All right, I wanted to say that. But yeah, Justin, let's talk about a couple of examples of projects just to really be specific, crystal clear about NFTs. Like, what do they look like? What are they? What are some of the categories? Maybe talk to us about some things you've looked at, some things you've purchased. But anyway, give us an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah. So the main one, I think that I guess you could say is the most popular, or at least carries the most revenue, in the NFT space, the most transaction volume, would be these collections. I kind of alluded to it earlier, where you'll have a lot of times you'll have a collection of NFTs that's 10,000 unique NFTs, and they're little, like, think of them like little trading cards. They're profile pictures of. There's some that are like, they're meerkats, and they have different types of meerkats, or it's monkeys. And it's essentially, within the collection, you have some of the items that are like ultra rare, and then some that are common and very common. But the market right now is really spending a lot of time on these collections, and it's kind of like popcorn. It's hard to even know like which one's gonna, do well. But the main thing there is, think of them like trading cards, like Pokemon cards, or like NBA cards. When we were kids, you'd open a pack or whatever, and I got the Michael Jordan rookie. Congrats, you're a millionaire. You can retire now. But that's kind of one concept. And there's even within that space, there's so many layers of utility that we'll get into later about like how you can use those. But another one is called one-to-one. So this might just be an artist. Like I was reading a story. There's an artist in Africa, and this guy, he decided to make these digital paintings of just some landscape that I guess was around his town in Africa, and he sold his art as NFTs online for like $40,000. So in that situation, he created one art piece. It's not like a huge collection of like all these different little trading cards, but that's called a one-to-one. And you even got NFTs that are one-to-ones that are actually music. So it doesn't have to be visual art. It can just be audio clips. But those are kind of the mainstream ones. Then you've got other things coming in, like NFL All Day has a new project that they're launching. It's still in beta, but that one is it's called NFL Moments. So they're taking like clips, 4-second video clips from certain NFL plays. I'm in on that project, and I've had fun with that, where you basically buy a pack of 3 or 4 video clips, and some of them are more rare than others. I actually got the Devontae Smith, his first touchdown. That was kind of a cool one, just because I was like, oh, it's a rookie. He's he won the Heisman. He's got a big name, and I got his first touchdown. That might turn into something down the road. And then I got like a DK Metcalf rare catch that I was able to actually sell for a decent profit. But yeah, the NFL is going to turn that into something, but right now it's still pretty early on and in beta. But those are sort of like different types of collections. And then there's also Web3 gaming. So this is actually a lot of the profile picture projects, where it's like a collection of 10,000, are pursuing this gaming concept. So one of the NFT collections that I'm in on, it's called Scarcity, warriors, and they have wizards and archers. So they've got like these 3 different types of characters, and they're actually building a video game, a 2D video game, where you'll be able to connect your wallet to the video game and play with your character and like upgrade your character and stuff like that. So it's getting into a certain, like, it's getting more complex, right? Like it's not just an image of something, but now it's an image, but it has some sort of utility, some sort of thing in a game, where you can, play with it, upgrade it, make it more valuable, do with it what you will.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that, NFTs are attracting people from different sort of segments. So you've got your collectors, right? I actually bought Duke University released their first NFT that the school has done with a partnership with a new NFT exchange called One Of, where they did an NFT of sort of the ticket. So it's a digital 3D, sort of turned video, flips around, but a digital version of Coach K's final home game against North Carolina as sort of a digital ticket. It didn't give me access into the game, but it's just a memorable piece. I really didn't buy that to sell it. I bought it to keep it, right? So that's a collector. Justin, we also should talk about, people do invest in these things, and some people have made a lot of money investing. That's sort of a different discussion, and we'll get into that a little bit more in episode 2 about the risk curve and the risk and volatility components of NFTs. But you also mentioned, like you said, there are games where, and we'll get into this more later, there are games where you have to have the NFT. The NFT is basically your quote-unquote license to play this game. And so, like, with Scarcity, you and I both have pieces of that collection. And you actually have to connect your digital wallet, to the game, and the game basically reads whether or not you have one of the authorized tokens. So again, it's a really cool thing. It's attracting people from a lot of audiences. 2 questions I want to entertain here, and we'll take them in order. The first one is, If you're saying like, how does stuff like this happen? Like, how do we get to a place where like we have NFTs and digital art? And I want to zoom out for a second and talk about culture. You talked about, sort of pop culture, Justin. I think that was a good place to lead us. In pop culture, I wish I could talk more as more of an expert on this. I'm fascinated by it. I'm a student of this, but I'm not an expert or a teacher of this. In pop culture, you basically can tell what's a big deal in culture by what makes its way to art. Now, we don't just mean drawings, right? Art could be paintings, murals, music, video. In other words, you can listen to a decade of music and actually understand a little bit about that decade, or at least what's true of that decade is represented in a culture's music, right? You can even learn a lot about a specific culture or subculture through art, through music, So the point is, art is a demonstration of, and really I don't know exactly the word to put on it. Like, art happens because culture happens, right? Art is an extension and an expression of culture. So we should not be surprised if we have a digital culture developing in blockchain, developing on Discord with these little, communities and subreddits and all this other stuff. If we have digital culture, we're going to have digital art. And the culture uses the tools of the culture blockchain to make art. So in other words, this is not some like, oh man, this is weird, this should have never happened. This was really an eventuality. Like, this was always going to happen because this is what people do. In one sense, we should have expected this because this was like very predictable. The second question is, Justin, I want to turn this over to you to answer, is sort of how did this happen? But secondly, why are these things valuable? Like, why can an artist in Kenya or Ethiopia or Africa create a digital piece of art, have instant distribution, and people like pay real money for these things? What gives these things value?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd say is value's in the eye of the beholder, for one thing. So, what gives something value to me may not be the same thing as a person that paid $40,000 or $20,000 or whatever for some piece of digital art. So I can speak into a few different things I know about why people are buying this stuff. And some of them are more entertaining than others. So, like the first one that pops up to me is you've got one of the first projects that came up. Actually, I think it may have been the first NFT project. It certainly is the first one that took off, is CryptoPunks. And, I think I can't remember how many CryptoPunks there are. Let's say there's 10,000 CryptoPunks.
I think it's 10,000.
It is 10,000. Okay. I thought so. But, so you've got all these people, people that I follow on crypto Twitter and stuff. And, they've been into crypto for a while. They've accumulated a lot of Bitcoin, Ethereum, whether through trading or maybe they just bought really early. And one of the aspects that has been driving up prices just to be like crazy high, like a CryptoPunk selling for over $1 million, right? And it's like, okay, the technology is real. Let's be serious about that. But also, like, there is this humorous aspect of like someone just paid $1 million for a JPEG, and that's hard to get around. But some of that, obviously it's the collector mentality like you were talking about, but it's also, it can be a flex move to be like, hey, look, like I have so much crypto wealth. I was able to buy a CryptoPunk, right? And then from there, it's like, okay, now the CryptoPunks are starting to like have this reputation of like they're original gangsters in the NFT space. Like they are the pioneers. Now CryptoPunks are becoming a brand of these people that really were kind of the first in the space. And they have a lot of money. So I don't know, that's a very dynamic, or there's just a lot of layers there, right? About why you might want to get in on CryptoPunks. But I think the main thing there is, like I said, the technology underneath it is real. It's not a scam. And there are individual collections that are scams that they're just, it's from someone has bad intentions and they want to rip you off. But I will say the value is there and it is real. But it's hard to kind of pinpoint, I think, everyone has their own motivation, basically.
Yeah, that's good. And again, some people collect, some people, I remember growing up, right? We bought, I've got starting lineup figurines and signed baseballs and bronze coins, cards of players that I liked, right? And I guess I would sell them if someone offered me money, but I did not ever buy them with the intention of selling. I bought them for the memorial aspect, right? The collector aspect. It means something to me because it's connected to memories I have.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I really, really love about the whole blockchain experience and this whole space, and we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating, discussing what gives NFTs value really makes you ask really good questions about what gives anything value. And really that it's this. There's more people out there that want something than there are supply. It's a simple supply-demand component. And so, everyone flocks to a certain thing gets status. We'll talk more about that in a second. And there's demand for it. So you talked about the rarity of things. What gives NFTs and really this whole space legs, if you will, is this concept of provable scarcity. So I know, Justin, you and I have been in collections, and it's like, if you get a gold item or a rare item or whatever, that's one of ever so many, and they're not going to print more, and that's recorded on a ledger, right? Mentioned that Ken Griffey Jr. thing again, where Upper Deck in the late 80s, early 90s, they kept printing those stupid things, and you thought you had a card worth $75 out of a $2.50 Upper Deck pack, and basically it wasn't worth the paper and ink it was printed on and printed with. That's not really going to happen with at least legitimate NFT projects.
Yeah, I think that digital scarcity is really important to me. And I don't know if you said provable digital scarcity.
Yeah, but provable scarcity.
Provable is an important word there too. Like I've often talked to people about NFTs, and they're like, "Well, anybody can just right click and download this thing. Like, what? Why is that any different than it was before?" And it's very confusing. And if you go back to art, I always like to use analog examples. Like artists over the years, they had ways of basically marking their artwork as originals. Like there's physical ways to verify artwork as being original, right? And yeah, like I could go over to Brandon's house, and maybe Brandon has a fake Mona Lisa in his painting in his living room. Okay, he does not have a fake.
That was supposed to be a secret, Justin.
Sorry, I let the cat out of the bag. Right, but like Brandon can do that. Feel free to do that, Brandon. And I hope that Mona Lisa painting brings you lots of joy. But I know it's fake, right? Like that is most likely fake. Maybe I could be wrong there, but you get the point. Like
it's
just
fake.
Just because someone can make a fake Mona Lisa doesn't mean the Mona Lisa isn't valuable, right? It just means that things can be faked or whatever. But it's provable. So on the blockchain, for example, yeah, someone can right click my JPEG or whatever, but they don't own it. Like it's not their property. And the blockchain basically, this is part of the cool innovation about it, is it gives us the ability to verify digital property that we've never been able to verify before, right? And so that's the underlying layer there is now because of blockchain, we can verify things in the digital space just like we have been able to in the analog space for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I think take it a step further, and this is a little bit of maybe use case, but I'll mention it because I think it's relevant here. You talked about property, and there actually is a case for, and this will probably end up in like sort of legal precedent and all that kind of thing, but there is a case to be made that, for instance, you and I had a conversation with some friends about, I had an NFT appear in someone's like ad or billboard or something, and it's like, okay, like that's someone's property, right? Like I paid for that. I paid, and I actually was the original owner of that piece. I think we're going to see a standpoint where, in other words, you mentioned CryptoPunks, sort of this pixelated project of all these dudes with crazy hair, and I guess women too, right? Anyway, hoodies and glasses. But the point is, you can look up that collection. You'll know what I'm talking about. The point is, if someone wants to feature your NFT, I mean, there's a real case that they should pay you licensing and royalties, because, they're not allowed to simply, quote unquote, right click and save as JPEG your art and then use it for, for gain, right? That would be violating really all the laws in the sort of the copyright, trademark, and asset ownership space. So it's a good point. And again, we're gonna get to a lot of those spots, pretty quickly. Justin, two key words, and this will round out episode 1, and we'll shift to episode 2 and talk more about like more specifics, where we see the space going. 2 specifics on NFTs, 2 things that if you want to understand NFTs and why they matter, I think these are 2 key words to really understand and wrestle with and try to get a hold of. And those 2 key words are status and access. Status and access. So NFTs, like other things, give you a certain level of status. And again, if you're older, you're like, hey, that's dumb. I'm very comfortable being who I am. And I get that, right? It's kind of fun to poke at. But, you drive the car you drive and the brand of car you drive, or you buy a certain polo shirt with a little emblem on the side, or whatever side it's on. You buy the polo shirt you buy for a reason. And I think if we look at a lot of our purchases, we buy things we buy because it gives us, and we don't think of it as status, but it gives us sort of belonging and a certain status in our community or sub-community. It means something. I even say to people sometimes, if you live in a neighborhood that's a desirable neighborhood or a famous neighborhood or whatever, someone says, where do you live? And you say, oh, I live in X neighborhood. And saying that means something, right? If you say, oh yeah, I live downtown, it's like, oh, like that's pretty swanky, right? And again, it's like proxy. If you say one thing, like it means whatever. If someone says to me, Justin, I'm an original CryptoPunks holder, like, okay, like it means a number of things. It means something about your net worth. It means something about how early you were in the space. It's like saying I was the 10th person to invest in Facebook. You're like, okay, like that means something. You have a certain kind of status. The second word is access. And Justin, I want to get your feedback on this, but access. So how do NFTs give people access in a way that's unique and valuable?
Yeah, so one of the I'll just give you a great example. Going back to the Scarcity project, they're rolling out a video game, and the only way to get to be a part of testing the demo video game and providing feedback before it goes public is actually owning one of the NFTs, and that's how you verify to test out the game, and it gives you access into. That's an example where it gives you access into basically like a process, right? An exclusive club, if you will, or membership, committee or whatever, of actually testing out a real product before it launches. And I mean, that's just one small example. But there's definitely, I don't know of a whole lot of event access stuff yet. I think Gary Vee did something that you might be able to speak into, Brandon. But even, having access into certain types of events, whether, concerts, sporting events, where NFTs, like in order to have this experience, to go partake in an experience, you have to own the NFT, and that's essentially your ticket to get in. So those are kind of the big things that I think of when I think of access.
Yeah, and access, one of the words that's tied directly to that is the aspect of community. And again, it's when we think about the digital world and we ask really good, common sense, insightful questions, it really actually gives us insight into our physical world. If you want to play golf at a certain golf club and have access to the amenities of that golf club and the pool and the event and the 4th of July celebration, you have to be a what? You have to be a member. You have to pay dues. And if you want to play golf at that golf club, you have to go with a member. It's access, right? You are paying to get access. And so from a digital standpoint, Justin, you mentioned events. That is happening. It's just not all the way there yet. But the point is, if you are part of some of these digital communities, it gives you access to new projects where if you're not part of that community, you simply don't have access yet. And you may be listening and thinking, I don't want access to that. And exactly, right? Like, I'm not a member of a country club because that's not an access that I need or want at this point in my life. But we're just trying to say, like, think bigger picture, right? In the future, if you want access to certain things, you will either have to buy an NFT, or by owning an NFT, by virtue of that, you will have access to things that you will not have otherwise. So again, status and access, this is a part of the digital world that is happening. And we'll talk about in the next episode how the digital world is actually going to step into the physical world, and sort of NFTs are going to be a big part of the bridge in a non-technical sense. I always have to say that. A bridge between the digital and physical world. And we'll talk more about that in episode 2. All right, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope that fired your imagination. Like I said, in episode 2, we'll talk more about specifics. We'll talk more about innovation and what's exciting us about the space. So I hope you'll listen to the second episode. And for Justin, I'm Brandon. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. For more information, check out our website at blazingcrypto.io. Additionally, if you have friends that are new to crypto, share our trailhead videos from our website, which is a great way to get introduced to crypto.